Now, we're going to hear from someone who's making her first official appearance in her role as Go Chair. We've already heard about how wonderful she is. A big round of applause, please, for Sonia Stewart.
Thanks very much, Adam. As if I wasn't nervous enough, but thank you for that. As a proud Yuin woman, I would like to begin by acknowledging that we're meeting on the land of the Darug and paying my respects to country. You're right, Adam, it is my first speech as the Go Chair, and I must admit, in sort of preparing for this speech, I thought it should be really easy, but in some respects it's really very challenging. And it should be easy because I'm talking about an organisation that I'm now the chair of, that I love, and Adam and Michael and James and your vision in starting up this foundation. I'm in a very comfortable audience with people who are supporting, who are online, and thank you so much for that, and with our wonderful students here in the room for support as well. But it's challenging because when it's the first, you don't want to muck it up. And I'm also the first Indigenous chair, and I want to make sure that there's a lot more to follow as well. And I'm part of the vision of this organisation in leadership and governance. And it made me think about my grandmothers, and it was lovely to hear about your grandmother. It made me think about my grandmothers and your mothers as well, and acknowledge Muriel and Lisa. And hopefully they're listening in Adelaide today, and acknowledge your families. And it made me think of my grandmothers, and I wanted to just share a little bit about them, a little bit about my path and why I love Go. So my grandmothers, you probably couldn't think of two different types of backgrounds. So my grandmother Alma was born under a lily-pilly tree on the beautiful Yuin country, my country, in Wreck Bay. And she met my grandfather Cecil from Wallaga Lake, further down south, and they settled in Alexandria and then in the Dundas Valley, which isn't very far from where we are today in Homebush. My grandmother, Ida, was born near Zurich in Switzerland and met my grandfather Budimir in the Second World War. He was from the former Yugoslavia, and it's just such unique and different backgrounds that they had. They came to Australia 65 years ago, and my mother recently passed away, but she was a very young girl when they arrived. They went to Bonnyrigg and they were tomato farmers. So you can't imagine probably two women that had such difference in where they were born. But they had such similarities in their vision, which was that every generation wants something better than the generation before them. And in our culture, we're taught many things, but respecting our elders is so very important. And ours is an oral culture, so we need to rely on our elders, and we listen and we learn from them about the things for 60,000 years that has happened. And from a very young age, I had such deep respect for my grandparents and deep respects for my aunt and uncles. And I knew of all the struggles that they had. And I felt not pressure, I felt an expectancy to do well. And so I was brought up believing that I could be whatever I wanted to be if I worked really, really hard with my father and mother, Greg and Rita, my grandparents, my aunts and uncles and broader kin. I need to say that school probably wasn't, always the easiest for me. And a lot of, I want to acknowledge our scholars and, Adam and Michael, you've also shared your experiences about school. It's the time when you leave your family and your kin and you go to a different place, a place where people are different to you, and you didn't probably know the difference, and at worst it's racism, at best it's ignorance. But you work hard, and towards the end of that school, I finished school, the first one in my family to finish school and go to university, and I graduated with Commerce and Law many, many years ago. And education was the great enabler in my life, and opportunities and access, and that's why I love the Go Foundation, because yes, it's about financial support, and really acknowledge everybody online and the donations that you're making. We deeply acknowledge those, and thank you very much. But it's also about networks, and it's also about support, and it's everything. So that's why I'm just so grateful to be leading an organisation like Go that is empowering our young people, young men and women, through education. And this is about economic empowerment and about fixing up the country, to be quite truthful at times. I want to thank the outgoing chair, Sam Mostyn, and I want to thank her for so many things, but in this forum, I want to thank her for her outstanding leadership of the Go Foundation. And, she has such courage and intellect, and she uses it for a variety of reasons, but often for reasons that most of Australia probably don't even know or appreciate in terms of issues that are important to our country. So I wanted to acknowledge you, Sam, and thank you on behalf of the Go Foundation. And then on behalf of Sam and I wanted to thank our amazing, directors. They're just a pleasure to work with. Shirley, you and the team here at Go, and not only today, but every day, and the work that you put in is so very important, and I wanted to acknowledge that. I wanted to say that on the way here, I actually spoke to my grandmother, and how amazing that at my age, and I won't disclose what that age is, but the big 50 might have been celebrated sometime quite recently, but that I have my grandmother. And I spoke to her on the way here, and unfortunately she's not in good health, so she was going to a lot of medical appointments, and she was doing another one today, which I'm a bit distracted by, but hopefully it'll go well. And I remembered a conversation I had with my grandmother about 3 months ago, where I called her to tell her that I'd just been appointed the Chief Executive Officer of the Law Society of New South Wales, which is Australia's biggest constituent body. I now lead a profession of 36,000 solicitors in New South Wales. And I also told her that I was the chair of the Goods O'Loughlin Foundation. And it gives me goose pimples when I think about this, because she screamed. She screamed the scream of joy, and she screamed the scream of commitment and determination. And she screamed for those that couldn't be with us in body but were there in spirit. And it was just the most amazing sound I've ever heard in my life. And she said to me, "I knew you could do this." And she said to me, "Hard work always pays off." And so I couldn't help but share that yarn with you about my grandmother, who was so very, very important to me. And so being the first Indigenous chair of the Goods O'Loughlin Foundation, I want to remind all the students here, and I know that you probably don't need a big reminder on this, that we stand on the shoulders of those that go before us. And you heard that didge at the beginning with Black Douglas, and you could have heard the ancestors and the spirits and the ancient spirits of 60,000 years. And that's what it's all about. And I cannot wait, as the chair of the Goods O'Loughlin Foundation, to listen and learn about what our students hear when they're on those shoulders, and to help and support and guide them, but only when you need it. And to disrupt people's thinking about what your capabilities and capacities and your aspirations are. And to scream with joy, like my grandmother screamed with joy when you reach your potential. And then importantly, to get out of the way and to watch you soar. And I really want to thank everybody online and for sponsoring us here today, because that's what it's all about. So thank you very, very much, and have a great afternoon.